Hey, Hawkeye fans, Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register here in College Park, Maryland. We don't usually do post-game basketball podcasts because it's always so busy afterwards, and it is busy here, but we thought because of the magnitude of the victory and the magnitude of the collapse, we thought we would jump on here at 9:11 p.m. Eastern Time on this Thursday night after Iowa's 85-78 overtime win over Maryland. Dargan Southard, our women's basketball beat writer, back home, running the controls here. I'll be honest, the end of the game was still a blur to me because I was rewriting my story. As you might imagine, Dargan, you've been in this position before yourself. So let's go to you first. What did you kind of make of the collapse and then the resilience to pull out the win and move to 8-0 in Big Ten play?
Yeah, I mean, it really was a sense where as much as the walls were kind of slowly closing in over the last 3 minutes, I would say from about 3:15 when Iowa was up 17 to about 30 seconds left or so. I mean, yeah, they weren't playing well, but it looked like it was going to be enough of a cushion. And then you had the back-to-back turnovers where Chit-Chat Wright can't handle the inbounds. Maryland scores, and then I honestly didn't even see a replay of it. Whatever happened with Hannah Stolke trying to inbound the ball did not entirely go any way that it needed to.
Yeah, it was like the UNI Texas A&M game almost. It really was.
Right. So it was, literally the one thing that Iowa did not need to do was turn the ball over on back-to-back possessions and let Maryland score on both of those, leading to a game-tying three, which was, in the nick of time and really kind of just seemed to set a very ominous omen for what was coming in overtime. And, I mean, I'm not sure many Iowa fans out there thought that overtime was going to go the way that it did. And it's not even really that Iowa played that well offensively in overtime. They just hit their free throws, which is obviously key in a close game, and played good defense, which is really kind of what got them up in the first place. So I think that there's an appropriate amount of negativity or a negative tone to carry from this. And it's because you kind of saw this building over the last, well, really, I guess 3 games, because you had, them go up really big at Indiana. That Hoosiers come all the way back. Or Iowa rallies and makes that a close game. And so that was the first tight one, of this stretch down the stretch. But then more so the Oregon and the Michigan State games where they were playing well, up double digits for most of the game, and then to varying degrees kind of let the foot off the gas a little too early. It's just tonight they let it way off in Maryland, which already had one crazy win over Michigan or
right.
Featured a similar rally of,
exactly
unbelievable circumstances. And so I definitely think that this team dodged a big bullet tonight because, as we've documented, they do not play well over there and they do not win over there very often. So for them to go over there and to certainly control and to certain extents dominate a pretty good Maryland team for, 37 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, they dominated him for 42 out of the 45 minutes, to be honest.
And so, that's a pretty big notch on this team's belt and this program's belt. So that can't be, I still think that's the prevailing takeaway, but yeah, it's kind of adds, a little sprinkle of problematic on top of it.
Yeah, I get and there's definitely. So I interviewed 4 players plus Jan Jensen. So I just came up from there. I talked to Journey Houston, Ava Hayden, Taylor McCabe, and Chit-Chat Wright, and then Jan. I just asked all of them, I think, or most of them, like, what is kind of your feeling right now? And they're all like, the answer is they're celebrating their resiliency, because that was not easy to take that gut punch, a 17-point blown lead. And then to come out in overtime and then finally get the stops that they lacked at the end of regulation. I'm working on posting some videos here, but Jan Jensen was actually pretty tremendous there were a couple other national reporters here for her, and so one of them asked about what she said in the huddle, and it was actually really, really good. I wish I could give you the exact quote, but it was inside. She knew she was kind of like freaking out, like every fan watching on TV was, because like that just happened, and it's her job to kind of get this team to rally. And the nutshell version of it was that are you going to let what you've done for, like you said, 37 plus minutes to go to waste here in these last 5, or are you going to go take it? Because I think her mentality was they were going to win this game coming in. And just talking to a few coaches before the game, they felt like they had a good chance if they could execute, and they did for 37 minutes. And so I think what we saw in overtime was more of an adherence of defense. They made some bad switches late in regulation. Obviously, Maryland hit its final 7 shots, but I think coming out of postgame, I have to give Jan Jensen a lot of credit for keeping this team pointed in the right direction. Sending them the right message, the message that worked, and they got stops at the end. And we're talking about we're going to nitpick some of the stuff that went wrong, but ultimately you're talking about a win at the Xfinity Center by 7 points in overtime. And, a lot of players came up clutch throughout the night. Like almost every single player on the roster had some clutch moment at some point. So I think that was kind of the prevailing theme of postgame. And that's kind of, I felt like I got a lot clearer picture of kind of the mindset coming out of it.
Well, and also you think about all the roles a head coach has over the course of 40 minutes. And yeah, a lot of it is X's and O's decisions and what lineups to go with and what plays to call and all that. But a large chunk of it is getting everybody in the right mental state to get the best version of them late in the game when, a team is clearly has all the reasons to be rattled and, is tired and did not expect I'd need to play 5 more minutes. And so, there's definitely some advantages that I think, even though Jan Jensen is very early in her head coaching tenure, she's obviously not very early in her overall coaching tenure. And so I think having been through a lot of scenarios allows her to kind of, like you say, be freaking out on the inside, but not let that bubble out to the outside because, all those players are looking at their head coach in that moment of like, okay, what do we do now? Because that was not supposed to happen. So, yes,
she brought up the Baylor game and the Miami game. Two early in the season, 2 ugly-looking games that they found a way to survive, and that's kind of been the story of this season so far.
I do feel like there's kind of a loose Iowa football parallel forming in that.
We always love Iowa football parallels.
Yeah. Right. But this one, like it doesn't look pretty all the time, and it doesn't always feel like they're playing as well as they're playing in the moment. But at the end of the game, it just ends with a win. Obviously that doesn't happen all the time for Iowa, but a lot, I think about the Michigan State win this year is kind of like perfect example of, chaos throughout, but in the end, it finds a way to reach the conclusion that you want it to. And that's how it feels, with this Iowa team. Offensively, there's been some nice developments, but, every kind of weapon or storyline for how to score kind of comes with a but with it of like, Ava Heiden's great, but can she stay on the floor? Hannah Stolke's great, but can, everybody included not turn the ball over in the most important parts of the game. And so, I think this team is still building that kind of mental toughness that you need to get to March and have, the stakes be even higher and you perform the way that you want to. I mean, January 22nd is kind of a good time, I feel like, to go through a game like this where, the urgency can be there to say, hey, we've had some troubling moments trying to close out games. Let's not do that again. while also, realizing that I was in a tough stretch and has started that tough stretch with two, pretty solid wins. And so, or the rank stretch with two pretty solid wins. So, yeah, I mean, I think it hasn't always looked pretty, and the defensive side of things has been more consistent than the offensive side of things, kind of across the board. And that was, Iowa's defensive game plan tonight was pretty strong, as part as the first 37 going the way that Iowa wanted it to. So, yeah, I think there's, the Iowa does. I guess the one thing, if you want to think about it this way, is that there's another ranked test coming up in a few days, and there's not going to be much time to let anything from this really dwindle or be there beyond the next couple of days. So I think it's a good one to kind of digest and then flip to the next page.
Yeah, and it'll be nice to be at home for that one. And we said on our podcast this week, if Iowa can go 1-1 this week, you'd take that as a big victory because of the schedule. And now they have a chance to go 2-0 this week, coming home where they haven't lost. And so, I revealed to Jan Jensen, I guess. I mean, she claimed not to know it, and I believe her. But Iowa's now 8-0 for the first time since 1995-96, so predating Bluter Jensen. In the 8-0 in the Big Ten. The Caitlin Clark team started 7-0 2 years ago. And do you remember where they lost that first game, Dargan? I believe you do.
I was there. Was that the collision heard around the world in Columbus?
Yep. And there was a collapse in that game too.
And then
right.
There was a collapse. Yes, down the stretch.
Yes.
And then Caitlin got collided running off the court, and that became
right. But that team did not win in overtime.
Right. So, yeah, that was and again, it's like that game. I believe I don't know why I remember it, but I'm pretty sure the final score was 100-92. And so, it's like you kind of have to train your brain to think like, all right, Caitlin played really well and they scored 92, but they gave up 100. So like, even though it looks a little different the way that I was winning games, obviously, but even if that's the case, it still seems to be mostly finding the same conclusion. So at least right now. Now, again, there's still a lot of season left and a lot of big games, even in the next few weeks. But this is definitely one that I think Jan, obviously, she's been there for all those trips to Maryland and knows how poorly they've played over there. So I think there's definitely significance in getting a win there after getting a win in Assembly Hall, which is also not a place that they've played super great. So that's two spots that Jan Jensen's taken her team into and won that this program really didn't win in very often. So I think there's something to say about that for sure.
Yeah, so we just sent this out like right as we started. So I got a couple 3-word headlines to read here. Jeff Collins says, road dubs rule. No question. You got to take those for sure. Tim McMahon was pretty funny. He said, needed the Heimlich. Brian Ulrich, 8-0. And TJ says, way too close. Those are a couple right off the bat. Let's talk about a few individual players, Dargan, in this game. I thought, have we talked about Journey Houston yet?
Not really.
I don't think we have. I mean, so Ava Hayden goes to the bench with, I think a big story in this game was Ava Hayden picks up her 4th foul with Iowa leading by, I think it was 5 points at that time. And Journey scores 10 straight points to extend Iowa's lead to, I believe it was 12 early in the fourth. But 10 straight points from the freshman. They were all hustle plays.
I wonder what the last time she scored 10 straight points in a game was.
Yeah, right. I mean, she might not have done that at Davenport North. Who knows? But, I feel like this, as much as we can quibble with, hey, you blew a lead again, but you hung on, but still, we want you to win by 20. As each game moves on here, Dargan, we're finding more, not that we didn't know Journey Houston could do some nice things, but like she's gaining confidence. She talked about that with me after the game. She wasn't confident in the first half, gained confidence in the second half. Addie Deal, she looked really confident early in this game, and she's been performing really well off the bench. How about Taylor Strimolo off the bench in the fourth quarter when Kylie was a little bit off for a little bit? All three of them are becoming really solid bench players, and we've seen Jan now go to the Houston Stulke front line when Ava's in foul trouble. And so I think we're seeing this kind of an eight-person rotation sort of come to fruition, right? I mean, a little bit of Layla Hayes, but I like those bench pieces and how. If Journey Houston can be this and Addie Deal can be that, and Taylor Strimolo just, she's going to have some clutch moments, sometimes. I really like this team. Honestly, the top 8 is really effective right now.
It does feel like the bench pieces, like just when one of them seems like, oh, maybe they've been quiet for 1 or 2 games, they come out and they do something productive. Taylor Strimolo being a perfect example. Big 3 there when she hit hers. And, it is interesting that Journey has kind of become the Ava in foul trouble contingency plan. And, that's a perfect example of adapting to the flow of the season and not, being rigid in what you thought it might turn out to be in November, because, that's not exactly there are some peculiar elements of that being the backup plan. And obviously, Hayden has shown that she's getting better, but, she's definitely going to be in foul trouble again at some point this season. And so, I think that's been definitely a surprise development, but I think that it falls in line with exactly what Iowa needs from that position when Hayden is out of the game. And that's somebody to, be able to go and grab rebounds and, kind of clean up. It isn't, I believe all 5 of those buckets were, I don't even know if they really weren't had the ball in her hands that much until the very end of her putting it in. So, again, that goes back to Jan's in-game role of keeping these freshmen whose confidence and mental, stability is one that can waver a lot just because they're freshmen. When you get the productive version of them, they're pretty good and they're very valuable and helpful in situations that call for it. So, that's kind of the makeup of a team that, can kind of win a lot of different ways and be versatile in how they, win and who plays well and kind of who leads things on a nightly basis.
Yeah. I think that the top 8 all had really positive contributions, every single one of them. Kylie took a couple charges. She hit 4 for 4 from the line when they needed them. Ava Hayden, kind of a quiet 20 points, honestly. Stulke with a double-double. Who am I missing? Chit Chat, scores 8 of Iowa's 18 in overtime. She had some rough moments in the last minute. But I think the other kind of shared thing is they all kind of had some of their own rough moments in a way, Kylie had a few silly turnovers, or it seemed like it anyway. Hannah maybe missed some free throws, had a bad pass here or there. Chit Chat kind of blew it in the last minute. Ava getting in foul trouble. They all had their faults too, but they all also had their positives. So I don't know, that's going to be kind of a theme of my follow-up column if I ever finish my first write through, is that what Jan Jensen is seeing in these late game, I don't want to say meltdowns, but today was a meltdown.
Right.
but they've let teams close the gap late. Michigan State, Oregon.
Right.
But she's the nutshell version, and again, I hope you read the column because that's going to be a much more fleshed out version. Is that this team now needs to believe that it's good. That's the message. They need to believe that they're good. They might be really good, Dargan. They might be, but they're kind of timid when they're in these moments. They're not quite sure they're good yet.
Right.
But now they're 8-0 in the Big Ten, 17-2 overall, with some really challenging games coming up. So they better believe they're good, or they might lose 3 in a row here.
So I was thinking about this earlier. So this is since I've been covering the team. So I got here Megan Gustafson's junior year, which was kind of her first Player of the Year-esque season. So you had 2 years of Gustafson, who was the clear superstar on that team. Then the year after that was Kathleen Doyle, who won Big Ten Player of the Year that year. Then you had 4 years of Caitlin. Then you had Olsen, who even took a little bit of time, but eventually got there. So you've had pretty much, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the last 8 years, certainly that this program's been at minimum a tournament team. There's been a clear-cut superstar or a clear-cut option late in games that, you're going to ride or die with most of the time. And so this team, again, it doesn't have that necessarily, but I don't know if it necessarily needs that as long as everybody can feel like they're the ones that can be, right in the middle of the productive action down the stretch. And so, again, yeah, I feel like that really is because, you think about it, they were ranked number 10. They're, for whatever January bracketologies are worth, they're a 2 seed. They're tied. Without too much of a stretch, the showdown against UCLA could be the top 2 undefeated teams in the conference. So, yeah, it's like maybe things weren't expected to be here, but it's kind of like the flip side of where last year started. Last year was 2-6. You didn't expect to be there either. And, you kind of got to react to it similarly and adjust to, maybe what your new reality is. And so, that's going to be an interesting development as this team kind of learns and develops and kind of finds that mental toughness that you need to play this well later in the year, which is obviously, the ultimate goal.
Exactly. Up next, me writing some stuff, putting videos up. I've been trying to do that. That's why I'm looking at my phone here as we go. But thanks for listening. Make sure to check out our coverage at Hawk Central. We're the only Iowa media to travel out here, so we appreciate you guys reading our stuff. It helps us to keep travel to these games. And thank you, Dargan, for your hard work on the live blog back home. I feel like we're a pretty good team, and it's fun when we get to meaningful games like we have the last several years together.
Yeah, I think we definitely got our money's worth on this trip, both from a win, from a big win perspective and a big dramatic weaved in there at the end. So exciting one to watch, I'm sure, was to be there as well.
Yep. Appreciate you guys. This is Chad Leistikow, Dargan Southard, talking to you in an impromptu Hawk Central podcast. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you soon.